Hello, good afternoon, everybody, and you're all very welcome to the inaugural Cara Connect Wellbeing Seminar. The title of today's discussion is about navigating change, how layoffs affect mental health, employee survival syndrome, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Sharon Morrissey. Good morning, good afternoon, Sharon. We're very well. Sharon is an accredited mediator and certified member of the MII and the IMI. She has a degree in conflict management, sounds extremely interesting, and she provides training, mentoring, and coaching to groups and individuals in relation to personal effectiveness during times of conflict. So you're most welcome. And I also have the pleasure of being joined by Caitríona McNamara, an HR consultant with an in-depth background in developing and implementing effective HR processes and procedures to build and grow sustainable organizations. Caitríona is the founder and MD of McNamara People and is formerly of Open, Google, Pointy, and Caitríona.
Yeah, a lengthy career behind me. Thanks,
So you're both very, very welcome. We're especially delighted to have both aspects of the well-being. So we have Sharon providing well-being perspective, and we have Caitríona providing input from HR. So my name is John McElligott. I'm COO of Cara Connect. We are a well-being platform that has come out of the Nordics. We're a Nordic business, and we provide a platform to employers that can give their employees access to coaching, counseling, and therapy, largely on a preventative basis, and it covers all sorts of services, not just mental health. It includes things like diet, nutrition, and physical well-being as well. So delighted to get us started. So what I would like to do, just to punch right in, is maybe start with you, Sharon, and just to get a perspective on what is the current state of mental health in the workplace.
I think it probably, depends on who you talk to and where they are and kind of where they're at in their careers and stages of life and all of that things. You also have a huge amount of people that are going back into the workplace after COVID. So there's a lot of fear still in the community about that because people are traveling to and from, wherever they were before. But there's also a lot of anxiety on both sides. So the people who are still working from home remotely, there's a huge impact on loneliness and people feeling that they're, kind of almost forgotten about, and fear to go outside because they're now have been living in a room, we'll say, for X amount of time. And then you have the fear on the other side of people actually being with other people and afraid again of, I suppose, how relationships are looking, because relationships have changed so much over the past 3 years now at this point. It's hard to believe it's 3 years, but so people's relationships kind of have gone from where having a working relationship where people were able to talk about their issues and differences on a face-to-face platform. Then it went to online where people were just, typing things that were, not appropriate, I suppose, and there was huge kind of conflict management around that. And now we're gone back into people meeting each other face to face again and relearning, a little bit of relearning on how to do that in a respectful and meaningful way. So all of that, as you can imagine, has a huge impact on people's mental health. And so it depends on, as I said, age and stage of where people are at in their careers. There's no general consensus of that. Older people are finding it harder to go back into work or out of work. That, I'm not seeing that. I'm just seeing this nervousness and a little bit of fear around it, really, if I'm honest.
Yeah, that was a terrific set of insights. So it's obviously in 2023 a somewhat complicated picture in terms of well-being in the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely.
It sounds like things are not great. So maybe if I could turn to you, Caitríona. So obviously there's been quite a bit of news around layoffs recently. So maybe I could ask you, what is the impact in your view, in your experience, of layoffs on people in the workplace, those who are let go and also those who remain?
Yeah, it's huge, obviously. It's a big turning point for a lot of people. It's a fork in the road. and it's something that they're not in control of. So when people are facing things that are uncertain and they don't have control of it, it's going to naturally have an impact on your mental well-being. But I think also over the last 5 to 10 years, we've given people the language, or society has the language now to speak about these things. So while it is a lot more prevalent, I think it's actually a good thing too that people are speaking, or there is a focus on it, because maybe 10 years ago that wasn't there.
Yes. It was just the unspoken.
Exactly.
Right? And it's probably repressed. So the fact we speak more about it can only be a good thing.
Yeah.
Right? I see Sharon nodding at that. Right.
And sorry, just to say that I suppose it is brilliant that people have the language about it as well, right? And use the language about it, but it's about the meaning behind that language then as well, isn't it? It's not about using language for the sake of just, saying that something's going to happen for the sake of saying it's going to happen. It's about really investing in your employees' well-being, as opposed to just doing something for the sake of ticking a box.
Yes.
Yes.
So okay. So I think that's teed it up nicely. So obviously, mental health and mental well-being in the workplace is probably in a worse place than it has been for a while. Now people are at least willing to talk about it, which is quite good. So, companies are doing layoffs. No one's saying that they shouldn't. Of course, that is always going to happen. But maybe if I could turn to you again, Caitríona, how could we do layoffs in a way that protects people's well-being and is respectful of mental well-being?
Well, I think respect is the big word. It's showing people the respect that they deserve. It is when a business really becomes a business. This is the biggest business decision they'll ever make in terms of putting costs ahead of people. And sometimes that has to happen. But I think in the way that you deliver your message, or the preparation that goes into the rationale, or even showing like due diligence in terms of a business has considered options, that a layoff is the end that they wanted to avoid, but that they have to go forward with it. I think all of that will show employees that you've tried your best, but this is the conclusion that you've come to. And then in terms of how you deliver that message. So layoffs can be operationally and logistically very tough, because if you want to keep a small network in terms of who knows the information first,
Of course.
and then you want people to hear in as quick a manner as possible, but that shouldn't be to the detriment of how the message is delivered, or the preparation that goes into the information that employees have, and also what happens next. It's not just about going into the meeting and saying, this is the decision we've come to. It's how can we support you in this process or afterwards? Like, are there outplacement services we can provide you with? Are there resources like Cara Connect that you have that you can speak to someone? Because quite often, again, if you're the HR person or the manager delivering the message in those meetings, you mightn't be the right person to have the follow-on check-ins with that person.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
it's a weird dynamic.
Yes.
So
yes.
just ensuring that you have all of those resources in place and as much information for the people insofar as possible to help make those meetings as humane as possible.
Yes. And if we could turn back to you, Sharon, in terms of making sure it's not one size fits all. Because obviously these things affect different people in different ways. I'm sure there are some people who are let go who are maybe have no trouble finding the next job, or maybe even they're delighted to have the break, right? But there are those who will be affected. Are there techniques we can use, or is there an approach we can take to ensure that those who do need the support are actually getting it as quickly as they want?
I think actually something just came into my mind there, Caitríona, when you were talking, where you said, the HR person having to deliver the message. And sometimes it is the HR person or the manager that gets forgotten in this as well, that they have to deliver the message and that they have to be looked after also. So, it's about making sure that, again, it's that all-inclusive. We are looking after everybody, so that if the HR person who is delivering the message knows a person that they're giving the message to for the last 10 or 5 or 10 years or something, that they're both being looked after equally, and so I know that dynamic is weighted in favor of one over the other, in that one person still has a job and the other person doesn't, but the emotional impact on the people will be different, but will be equally heavy. So, in getting people ready, I suppose, to hear that message, there has to be a lot of work done, we'll say, in protecting, in protecting isn't the word, but like in kind of shoring up the HR people to be able to deliver that really, really difficult message. And then there has to be another piece of work done around people who are hearing the message and what that means for them, because it's going to be two completely different messages. So I think it's about, I mean, you have to know your audience really as such, don't you? And you have to, and I think in smaller workplaces, like it's really difficult. In bigger workplaces, they seem to have, you know, more of a, you know, broad spectrum of resources. So that's why things like CareConnect being able to offer these resources are going to be fantastic. Like,
But I think that was a good segue into managers, right? Because it's very often the manager who has to deliver the message, and that can be personal as well. So if you have a team of 10 people, you may have to literally choose 3 or 4 who will be leaving, and the remainder who are going to be cherished forevermore, right? And that can be very, very difficult. I mean, I know people who have been set up to give that kind of message, and they've been physically sick the weekend before, because it's just a very difficult thing to do, and it feels like there is a lot of pressure on them to do it. And obviously the way consultation periods work, that it can be quite drawn out as well. So I mean, what are the approaches we can use to help managers through a process, and they have their day job and they need to manage the business while this is going on as well?
Well, I think as Sharon said already, you know, we can't forget the different cohorts of people that are involved in the delivering the message and the aftermath. So for those managers as well, they need to consider, if they are losing team members, well, what's happening with that work? Because I think for the people who are staying, that is quite often well, I'm glad I'm staying, but does that mean I'm going to have to work longer or harder? So it needs to be considered at what point are managers brought into the conversation, and what information are they being given to help manage those conversations, because it's not as effective if they're going into a meeting and they don't have the answers themselves. That can lead to more uncertainty. So again, for me, it's all about preparation and really the logistics behind the logistics, and also the communications that are going out, making sure that you've considered all those things. But going back to your point, I think having as many resources for managers as possible, similarly to the employees being let go, resilience training can come up sometimes.
That's an interesting one to raise, because obviously we're at CareConnect, we're particularly interested in the preventative side. And, you know, there are a number of employers that have been doing layoffs recently that have been all about well-being, and that have been all about, say, you're part of a family and all of that. And that now seems to be a problem, because, okay, now suddenly the family is kicking you out. Right. I can see you both nodding. There's that has been discussed in the press quite a bit. So how do you think employers can deal with that more effectively? Because again, layoffs will happen, right? Let's be realistic about it. Though at the same time, you want to set up your employees so that they have sufficient well-being and access to well-being resources, so that when lightning strikes, or when the occasion comes along, that you're not behind it, that you actually have people set up to be able to succeed.
I think it all stems from the type of culture that you have in your organization. And there I think being a family, or, you know, was a buzzword for a lot of cultures in the last couple of years as well. And when it comes down to it, it is a business. So I think going back to how you're setting up your company, the transparency in terms of how are things going. Do your employees always know how the company is faring in terms of its revenue or profitability, and making sure they're always aware and on that journey with you. But also, I think having training for managers, mental health always being a part of the conversation, and not just at these tough times, always having a part of the conversation.
Consistency and communication is really, really coming through. And do either of you have perspectives on what leading companies are doing or are offering today with in terms of mental health, especially during layoffs? So, you know, especially larger employers, as you mentioned, Sharon, have been pretty good at providing outplacement services for a number of years. Though, have we seen evidence of employers also giving well-being services to those that are being laid off?
Yeah, I think there is. I think maybe unknowingly, or again, as a afterthought sometimes, it really depends on the size of the organization. I've worked in small, medium, and large, and it's been different at all stages. So an EAP can be thrown in there, but may not actually be well communicated prior to that. So people don't really know what it is. But I think when it is part of the culture ordinarily, or a benefit, I see it now as a just like healthcare, where it's a given, like a mental health support should be just a given. And it's becoming, I think, more prevalent like that, but certainly in bigger organizations.
We certainly hope so. That's that's certainly the trend
Yeah.
that we're seeing, because clearly the need is there. So one of the topics on for our for this webinar was around, I guess, survivor syndrome, right? And those that say, if you're in that team of 10 and 3 or 4 are being let go, and you're staying, like, what about the supports for those people, especially if your belief in the family has now just been eroded significantly? So Sharon, do you have a perspective on that?
I suppose I never bought into that whole family thing. When it's a business, you know. Most of the
Probably
mediations,
wise.
Like most of the mediations I would do would be with, you know, in workplaces like this, like, and people don't, you know, and even what Caitríona was saying about, you know, bring parties on the journey with you about, you know, this is what we're making, this is what we're losing, this is how it's going. Like, there are areas that the employees kind of just go, look, this is my day job, you know, and I don't really want to know, on one hand, kind of what's happening behind the scenes, but I do obviously want to know what my paycheck is going to look like at the end of the month. But I mean, again, it's about having those open conversations with people, and about really truly being open. And, you know, it's not saying things for the sake of, I know I've said this before, saying it, you know. So the employment assistance service schemes, what do they look like, and what do they cover? And what is the point in telling somebody at the very end, you know, for the people who are left behind, kind of, okay, so there's the employment assistance scheme, but the people who are left behind are suffering grief that they've lost, you know, their
Friends.
colleagues are gone.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is the same type of grief as, if, you know, sometimes people can downplay it, but grief is grief, and it plays out in different ways, and in you know, in people's minds.
That's very interesting.
So like, it is the loss of the culture as you knew it, or the family as you perceived it, or, you know, whatever that looked like for you is now completely different. And it also unsteadies the ground. So you're now standing on a ground that is moving, and you have to reassess who you are, where you fit, what your role is, and how that dynamic is going to impact both internally and externally. So it's huge. It's a huge piece of work, you know, that needs to be done. But again, it needs to be done not on a tick the box, I have it done. It needs to be really done, you know, for people to feel secure on that ground again.
Is that really being done? Because I mean, Sharon has painted a picture of, you know, it almost sounds like you're on you're floating on what feels like the Titanic, right? So the ground has shifted underneath you. You know, Caitríona, in your experience of employers, is that really being done for those that are remaining, that are experiencing a form of grief? Right?
No, I don't think so. Not in my experience. I think there's always been a mentality of, look, people will just get on with it and it will go back to normal sooner rather than later. I certainly think I may have had that perspective once upon a time as well. And there is an element of that. People, you know, they come in and they start doing their job, but now it's a new dynamic, and there's certain things that the trust might be gone. And people, they go through the change process in different manners. Some are very accepting, and some it will be a couple of weeks or months down the line. So I think it's making sure now that you are opening up the conversation all the time, and not just expecting people to get on with it. And maybe establishing the new normal. It's not that it's never going to go back to the way it was, but this is where we are now, and how are we going to improve for the future, so that people can find their new place, I suppose, and settle into it.
Well, grief has 7 stages, Sharon, famously. So, you know, are there?
It probably has lots more. You know,
maybe that's a simplification. In fact, but could you say a few words, because it's a very, very interesting idea. Could you say a few words about how companies can help employees to manage that grief?
Well, I think it is about, again, those real genuine conversations that are happening. And I don't honestly think that they can happen with the manager of the company, or, I don't see that. I suppose my experience has been, even in mediating with companies, that there is a level of kind of, what's the word, untrustworthiness
Yeah.
if it's the HR person is doing the mediation, because the person doing the mediation is employed by the company, and then there's like, where do
That's their job.
exactly,
Yeah.
and everybody's been paid by the same person. So I think for that genuine healing to begin, it needs to be with an outside person, outside of the company, that they know there's a confidentiality around it, that they know it's not going to go anywhere, that they know that what they say is being contained and is a container, it's being held in a vessel that keeps it safe and helps people work through that. So that would be my, if it's to be done in a really good way that supports our employees to stay healthy, I think, and that is including everybody, that is including managers, that's including HR, that's including, like, it's not just, it's everybody, because everybody's going to experience it in a different way.
Yeah, that's fascinating. If I could just wind back to how you opened up, where you painted a picture, Sharon, of the complications in the current workplace, in terms of remote working, in terms of hybrid working, in terms of going back into the office and connecting with people. I mean, you painted a picture where somebody who's laid off, who hasn't been going into the office for a couple of years, might really struggle to find a new role.
Absolutely.
Is that something for which there's evidence at the moment?
I suppose I can't give you statistics, but I can give you, like, my experiences of that. If but what I'm seeing is that, okay, so you've gone from a place of being part of a team to being completely on your own, to now not having a job, so therefore feeling not wanted, not needed, obsolete.
Not great. That's really not
great.
Yeah.
And that's the word, that word, and I've heard that over. I'm obsolete. And, like, still that word hurts, when it does for me. When I hear it, I feel it almost. And so at that point, you've got somebody who, things could go any way with them. So they really do need mental health supports, be that through, our traditional mental health supports, or be that through, coaching. Kind of looking at people who do the different psychometric testings to see where their skills would lie, or their interests would lie, and also kind of painting this as a picture of, and I don't mean, of flowers and sunshine and everything, but like as a new start. Now you have this opportunity to be what you want to be when you grow up, And
some of us are still trying to figure that one out. Yeah. Most of us, I think, really.
I think so. That's kind of how I think, but it needs, again, done in a really sensitive, meaningful way, as opposed to, making light of any of this, because people's feelings are, people's sense of self, it's not their feelings, it's their sense of self has been completely eroded in all of this.
But that's a very serious set of needs. So Caitríona, if you're dealing with somebody, or if you had a friend or family member who's feeling obsolete, who maybe got comfortable not going to the office, but is now almost isolated and disconnected, what can we do for such employees, or such ex-employees, to help them get back into the workplace?
Talk to me, talk to anybody, talk to, someone, as you said, who is objective and external, and so that people can feel fully comfortable and secure, because not everyone feels comfortable about discussing their feelings, or even pinpointing that they need to talk it out. And I think as well, in this day and age, sometimes redundancies or reorganizations are done by video chat, and that's very surreal thing to happen, where you're literally, ending the call, and a person is left on their own in their house. And as a people person, for me, that's the worst. So knowing that,
I'm guessing that's part of your guidance for how to do layoffs, is not to do them via video chat,
if at all possible. But again, having resources, additional resources available to people after that they can turn to, because again, not everyone wants to go downstairs to whether it be a spouse or a housemate or a flatmate and say, this has just happened to me. And I think it's making room for everyone who deals with change and layoffs in their own way. Because
Yes.
people can be very accepting, but then come back to being angry later.
Yeah, the
or,
grief,
you know,
it's the grief, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the, you know, it's those stages.
Mhm.
It's the
Yes, yes.
moving,
And
yeah.
have either of you, and maybe moving towards the end of the discussion, but have either of you got the comments on maybe generational differences? So I certainly know, say, my parents' generation, nothing was ever talked about, right? And then say my generation, we started talking and sharing how we were doing. And, you know, younger generations, I think, are much more better than we were, than we are in terms of being open. But do you have comments on how these kind of things, say, in layoffs, affect different generations and how we need to adapt our approach?
I don't think so. I think that would be too general, because I think there's so many complexities in terms of people adapting to change, or like Sharon said, seeing that, okay, this has happened to me, but maybe I'll take this as I'll reassess where I'm at and look at it as an exciting opportunity, whereas others are worried about, well, how am I going to pay my mortgage or whatever? So there's lots of different things. I do think, though, the younger generation has been given the language to discuss it more openly, and it's there, whereas previously,
But they're better equipped in some
better
ways.
equipped.
Yeah,
I think so,
yeah.
if they choose to, whereas
Yeah.
maybe with older generations, it's still an adjustment to speak so openly about how they're feeling.
And I think it's that, though, it's if they choose to, the younger generations, you know, yes, they have the language, but sometimes I wonder, do they have the meaning behind the language as well? Because a lot of their life has been lived. I have two people in this house who live behind screens, you know, and whereas when you're trying to have an actual conversation with them, that's very difficult.
Yeah,
You know?
I think
So it kind of it is something way too general to kind of put into a one liner.
yeah,
like,
I think life might have been less complicated when we had to worry about being chased by tigers and things. Right? Our mental health was probably easier to manage than in the current environment. Though, Sharon and Caitríona, thank you so much for your insights on this topic today. I think you've both shared some wonderful insights. I think we heard at the outset how mental health in the workplace is clearly not in a terrific place, right? After the last few years of COVID and remote working and people going back to remote work, going back to work after remote periods. We've heard how layoffs, do they affect people's mental well-being? Of course they do. And I think there was a very almost moving picture that you painted of people feeling that the ground is pulled from under them, and how survivor syndrome, does it exist? I think the conclusion of this discussion is it certainly does, and it feels a bit like grief. And through all of this, at least the insights I've gained from the two of you is that the importance of communication, the importance of focusing on well-being as part of the layoff process, and the importance of being consistent, so that, well, it appears as if trying to build a family within a business sounds like a bad idea. We don't buy that one. But we think we should be consistent in terms of our communication and in terms of our approach to well-being, so that when layoffs come, that, you know, we're all able to hand them better. And that includes managers, includes survivors, includes those who are laid off, and includes the poor HR person, Caitríona, for whom they are no fun whatsoever. So again, thank you to all our attendees. My name is John McElligott from Cara Connect. We are a wellbeing platform that enables employers to give their staff access to coaching, counseling, therapy, and all sorts of other services such as nutrition, physical health, sleep, financial health, and the rest. Please, for those who have further questions or who are interested, there's a link. There should be a link on the webinar page to follow up, or you can email us at webinar@caraconnect.com. And thank you both for your time.
Thanks.
You're very welcome. Very welcome.